Sorry, if I open my camera.
If you open your camera so everyone can see you, and then you can share your.
I thought my camera was open. Hang on.
No, it's not.
آقای کریمی معرفی نمیخواد، شما شروع کن.
Oh, okay. Yes, apologies.
It's okay.
There you are. You can see me in all my glory now.
Yes.
I didn't realize.
Welcome. So,
thank you very much. Well, hello everybody. Just give me a minute to get my get it set up. I'm not very familiar with PowerPoint. Slideshow.
Right.
Set up
please,
slideshow.
Everybody, if it's possible, switch off your microphone except Lord McNair.
Well, if somebody...
Sorry. Your mic is off. It's good.
Just muted me.
By accident.
Yes, yeah, I know. So, sorry. Yes, what I was trying to say was, if anybody wants to ask a question, of course, they can unmute. Okay, so let me just get back to this. All right, presented by a speaker, full screen. Yes. Okay. Okay, but it's not doing it. Slideshow. Set up slideshow, hide slide, realize timings, editor, play narrations, use timings, set up slideshow, set up. Presented by a speaker, full screen. No. Advanced slides, manually. Okay. Okay, well, we're going to start. We'll do it without slideshow, and you'll just have to try not to read the speaker notes. They may be too small to read anyway. So I'd just like to start with a little bit of an introduction. I've known Akbar for about 3 or 4 years, maybe longer than that. It all started because my grandfather had quite a bit to do with Iran in 1952. He was the British judge at the International Court of Justice. And of course, you'll all be familiar with what happened in 1952, 1953. And so while he was there, Mohammed Mossadegh nationalized the oil, and the British, he'd been trying to negotiate with the British for some time, or at least with British Petroleum, and not getting anywhere. So finally he lost patience and nationalized the oil. And the British decided that they were going to bring a case against the Iranian government. And so the court had to decide, did it have jurisdiction to take this case or not? And the point was that it was actually a company and not a country that had lost its, that had had its assets taken away. So the court decided, urged on by my grandfather, the court decided that no, it didn't have jurisdiction, and so they rejected the case. And of course, we know what happened, which was that the British government and the American government got together and organized a coup and overthrew Mohammed Mossadegh. Now, in 1997, I met a wonderful chap, very elderly by then, called Ali Reza Saheb. And Ali Reza Saheb had been Mohammed Mossadegh's private secretary at the time. He'd been a very young man at the time. And so he told me that my grandfather had been a national hero in Iran at the time, and that if he had been invited to Tehran to come and try and broker a deal with the between British Petroleum and no doubt the British government would have had their oar in there somewhere, but basically between British Petroleum and the Iranian government of the time, then he said the whole history of the Middle East, well, Iran and the Middle East, could well have been different. I mean, imagine Iran with a democratically elected government such as you had from 1906. I mean, it'd be a whole different thing, wouldn't it? So anyway, so he told me that, and then in 2014, the same mutual contact introduced me to a lady called Gitti Cave, who sadly passed away last year, I think, or earlier this year. But she what she asked me is to come and talk about what my grandfather had done in that period in 1952. And she said, please, can you also say something about not about human rights, about democracy, because the Iranian opposition is very fragmented. Well, so subsequently I discovered exactly what she meant. Anyway, so I brought the educator kit from the Youth for Human Rights course, and I handed out the booklets. And I don't know, Akbar, were you on that first series? You were, yeah, okay. So they were pretty pleased with my presentation about my grandfather, which had actually been quite a pleasure for me, because I'd had to research what he did. I knew vaguely that he'd done something good with Iran, but I didn't have the details. So anyway, so I talked about that, and I also talked about the human rights. And they said, well, would you come back and do a whole evening on human rights? And I said, actually, I think it'd be better if we started instructor training in Farsi on human rights, and then it could expand. So the gentleman who translated my talk, who'd interpreted my talk to the group, who's called Mahmoud Haidari, he is an accomplished and experienced adult educator. So he put the Farsi human rights, Universal Declaration of Human Rights, onto a PowerPoint and delivered a series of 15 workshops. And from that, exactly what I hoped happened. We had 3 people from the group delivered Farsi workshops, and then one Kurdish speaker delivered 2 series of workshops in Kurdish, and an Arabic speaker delivered a series in Arabic. So in fact, we've delivered all together with another series that Mahmoud did in English, and some that I've done in to a Yemeni group. We've actually done about 170 workshops. But what happened after that was that I was asked to introduce Gitti Cave to an executive for the publishers of the course, of the Youth for Human Rights course, and he was very pleased with what we'd done with what we had, which was in English. And he said, so what languages would you like? And so obviously I said, well, Farsi plus. And I thought, well, they have the languages, the course is translated into a lot of the European languages and one or two other languages, but no Middle Eastern languages. So I said, well, it would be great to have Farsi, Arabic, Turkish, Kurdish, and Urdu. And so that's what I've got. So I have a website. It's actually being amalgamated with another website. But I've got a website which is peaceful-planet.org. And that has the Youth for Human Rights course, which is for educating school children. It's got lesson plans and a teacher's manual. And among the other languages, of course, we have that in Farsi. So that is available for anyone to download. And there are videos as well. And if you want to, I mean, if you can watch the videos just by clicking on them, but if you want to download the PDFs, which you're welcome to do, then you would be asked to give your email address so that we can keep in touch with you. So anyway, so that's the backstory. That's how we come to be doing human rights. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to now go to my PowerPoint, and I'm just going to go through it. I don't know how to get it into slideshow. I thought I did, but I'm going to make sure I do for next time.
I can help you to do that. There is on the screen, there is a share screen, is a green button.
Ah, yes, of course. Yes, that's right.
Okay.
I have to do that, don't I? Yes.
Yes. And then you choose the
yep.
to share it so you can.
Right. So there we go. Can you see it now? Can you see the
Yes, it's coming. Yes, we can.
Yes, you can. Okay. All right. So, well, this is the introduction. So now I'm not sure how I can. Yes, there we go. So here is the basic question. In the UK, it's not quite as difficult as it is in some other countries. Does anyone have any comments about this question that I've asked to start off with, from wherever you are in the world? Anybody like to?
You mean that here that the people lives in danger, or you mean?
Well, wherever people are. I mean,
all right, sure.
I mean, I don't know. I have no idea, because obviously this is Zoom. I don't know where everybody is from, but
everybody here, they are from Iran.
Sorry?
Everybody here, they come from Iran.
But living here, or?
No, they are here. They don't.
Yeah. Okay. So does anybody have anybody like to make any comments about how things are in Iran in light of this question?
Yeah, actually I wanted to say almost many of Iranian who are, I mean, majority of Iranian who are not opposed to the regime, but they don't want regime to be governing the country. All of their life are in danger in Iran because the regime just arrest, rape, and kill whoever it wants without any, reason or any sense or anything. So I think majority of Iranian people's life are in danger in my country.
I mean, go on.
I may just add something, because, well, mostly the people know around the world that the Iranian regime is brutal regime and dictator. And we talk about mostly about the political prisoners or the people who objected or reject the regime. But on the other hand, and also is another point, that this regime, because of the environment and destroy the nature, is another problem caused by the Iranian people, for Iranian people and the rest of the people in the world. So the pollution and the rest of them, especially in Tehran, the pollution is extremely high, and many people, they suffer from the cancer and more diseases. And especially for now, the recently, what the Supreme Leader says about the vaccine, so he said that he wouldn't buy it from the US and Britain because he didn't trust them. And that put a lot of people in danger. So I don't know that it's come to that point that you write it here. Is your life in danger? Obviously, in Iran, ordinary people's lives in danger. Everybody there is threatened by this regime. That's what I wanted to add.
Yes, I see. I mean, one of my other interests, and from a human rights point of view, is natural health. And I don't know whether you have looked, but if you go to the Centers for Disease Control at Atlanta, Georgia, their website, they are, because the doctors in the States, they have to log adverse drug reactions. There's a huge and growing number of people who are actually who've either died or had serious, even life-disabling adverse drug reactions, so I mean, I think that governments are being criminally negligent in not telling people that they must, for example, take vitamin D3 to protect their immune system. I mean, there's an enormous amount you can do without having the vaccine. And honestly, I wouldn't have the vaccine. But anyway, that's a separate issue. I do understand that. But if the Supreme Leader doesn't want the vaccine, but by some chance does want people to be healthy, then that's a far better avenue to go down, in my view, than the vaccine. That may be a bit controversial, but that's just my personal view. Anyway, so thank you for that. So now we have two questions about human rights. So basically, how do you like to be treated? Somebody like to say? I mean, as a person, how do you like to be treated? Somebody volunteer something.
Well, I think Tolstoy.
Yeah. If no one has anything to say, I would take this question. Basically, from my point of view, it's what is written in the UN's Human Rights Charter is one of the main things, following that. And especially in Iran, for women and old people, just with dignity and respect and equality, which there isn't.
Sure. Okay. So do you think children should be treated with respect as well?
Yes. So every living being should be treated equally.
Yes. In the human rights course, there's a section. I actually forget her name now, but she is a Harvard academic, and she has written a book about human dignity. And actually, she's built her career on that subject, and she does conflict resolution and consulting and so on to companies and in difficult political situations. Just based on this question of dignity and dignity and respect. Now, the thing is that the preamble, which we're going to get to in a minute, goes into the question of dignity. In fact, it starts off with the first part of the preamble is about dignity. And if you think about it, if everybody treated everybody with dignity and respect, you wouldn't actually need to list out the human rights, because automatically human rights would be looked after. But since we're not all treated like that, we have to look at the areas of life where where we need to actually lay down that these are the human rights. Okay, now there's a thing about the Universal Declaration that every human right actually has a sort of parallel responsibility, because if you have the right to equality or to access to justice or whatever, then you also have a responsibility to make sure that other people have those rights as well. So it's not just 30 rights, it's 30 responsibilities. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Cool. Okay. Okay, so now let's have a look at the definitions of these words, because it's very, very important if you're studying anything to understand fully the meanings of all the words. So if you go past a word that you don't know, the whole of the rest of what you study tends to be blank. So we've defined human and rights and universal and declaration. So we need to understand these words before we understand the importance or the content of the Universal Declaration. So just have a look at these points because they cover most of the articles, but this is what a world operating on human rights would look like. I mean, some countries are more like that, and some countries are less like that. But even in, say, the UK, there are many, many instances when human rights are not respected. I mean, there is exploitation, there's human trafficking, the things that plague women in the Middle East, unfortunately follow them here. Things like honor killing and FGM and just generally the way that women are regarded in some societies. I mean, are things changing in Iran? Are women are women becoming more empowered in Iran, or is it still how it always has been? Anybody got any thoughts?
I wanted to say a kind of. So because there is internet and most of the women in Iran are educated and went to university. So regime tried best to suppress women, but it's not like regime gives them the power to be like to have the voice, but they are getting the rights to bring their voice up or to take them rights slowly. So you know about the movement about hijab.
Yeah.
They go to the street, they take off the scarf, they are arrested, they go to the jail, they are injected by wrong drugs to make them addicted or whatever. But still,
sorry, they're injected with what?
They're injected with we don't know what, but they are injected to be addicted, or they are injected with the medication that they choose to inject them. They are injected involuntarily, like they get received it, you know. So it's like they poison them in the jail, but still, or they keep them in the space in a jail that's murder and, you know, very like nasty people.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So, but still they keep resisting against the job. So, yeah, they are more in power, but it's not because the regime gave them the right. It's just because they had enough and they can't live with that anymore.
Yeah, I understand. I remember. Go on.
I need to clarify what Azadeh says. You mean in the prison, in regime prison, they inject the women that are imprisoned with the drugs that they make them addicted or make them ill or what?
That's true. Yeah, that's true.
Okay then. Okay. Just I wanted to make it clear. Thank you.
Okay. Somebody was telling me that that there is a big movement for animal welfare in Iran, and the person that was telling me was suggesting that that this was something that they could do that was politically acceptable, but it was actually getting practice in organizing, in political organizing. But it was a way of doing it without particularly antagonizing the regime. Is that still happening?
Can you please pronounce the name of the movement?
Well, animal welfare. So it's instead of sort of
that's human animal welfare.
Yeah, instead of human rights, because you start campaigning for human rights, as we know, you immediately get into trouble. But if you campaign for animal welfare, you get practice in political organizing.
But I need to let you know, they are arresting the animal like welfare activists as well as human rights activists.
They are.
So even they stab them in their in the street and they kill them.
Why is that?
So regime is against animal, like protecting animal rights, human rights, and whatever.
I see.
We just want to scare people from the smallest movement.
So any kind of political activity.
Any kind of and social activity.
Right. Okay.
So also just going a quick point on what Azadeh was saying. Even in Iran, owning a dog, like here in UK, which a lot of people, they own one or two or many dogs. Owning any type of cats or dogs is illegal.
Really?
It's been pronounced illegal from the regime. So they use that as an excuse to stop people if they see them walking a dog or something like that.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and they should shoot the pets in front of owner.
Yes.
Right.
In the brain. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, sorry, I just add that in Islam, the dogs are najas, and they kill the dogs, and also they believe that just keeping the dog at home is the enemy plans to make the Iranian people infertility.
Sorry, to make the Iranian people what?
Infertility. It means that it is an obstacle to Iranian people have the child, have the kid, for pregnant the women. This is the thing that they believe that, because the dog is najas in Islam, and they kill it and do that, and they believe that keeping dog at home make this problem.
Sorry, there's a word I don't understand. Najis?
Untouchable.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right, so is that the opposite of halal?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right, I see, okay.
But
Understood.
it seems to me, that the regime hasn't distinguished between the animal lovers and, the people who try to protect the environment, as well as the political activists and civil rights movements. The reason the regime starts, fighting with this sort of organization, that's what we have it in West as NGO, and we appreciate them. So they sort of like they believe it, that sort of movement. At the end, it comes against of the regime, and it brings the sort of like the awareness to the society.
So it brings what?
Awareness, social awareness.
Oh, awareness, yes. Well, sure, obviously it does.
And that they don't want it that one, so they want to have it as sort of like the living in the past, and use that sort of expression, what they use it in Islam in 1,400 years ago. So they bring it to that old culture or sort of hegemony that they have it, hegemony. So they push the people sort of submissive people. So they then resisted against of the regime. That's a totalitarian idea that they have.
Oh, absolutely, yes. And it doesn't really matter whether you call it Islam or you call it communism.
Sure.
It's totalitarianism, whatever kind of clothes you wear. Okay, let's continue. So, now the thing about human rights, I touched on this, but if you know my rights, I'm protected, and if I know your rights, you're protected. So it's important that we all know human rights. And I know it may seem a frail hope in a country like Iran, but I think that if everybody in Iran had a very good knowledge and understanding of all of the rights, I think it would be more difficult for the regime to maintain its power. And this is my slogan: knowledge is power. And so now this is a plug for my online course, and I thought the website would be finished by now, but I think I'm probably going to get a message later on. The website at knowyourhumanrights.com is where it's being finished, but then the whole thing's going to be moved onto peacefulplanet.org, and on whichever website. What we have is we have an online course, which there is a charge for, and the children's courses, there's going to be a course for secondary school children and a course that we've got, which is the one that I told you about earlier. And I've also written a primary school course. And I don't know how that could be used once it's been translated into Farsi, but it will be in the form of a booklet, and there'll be an audio version. So obviously it's not going to be taught in schools, but parents might like to introduce their children to these ideas. But certainly for the next few days, it's going to be knowyourhumanrights.com, and then later it's going to be peacefulplanet.org.
I have just one quick question, if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure.
Do you have any plans to try and at least get this course in some format into schools, sort of secondary schools and colleges?
Yes, I have actually written a whole program. I've got lots of contacts in Pakistan, and it's also the secondary school course has been used in Kurdistan, where there's an NGO and a chap called Isa Sufi, and he works with the UN, and he's got his own NGO, and he has done quite a bit of training of police, teachers, and security officials using both the Arabic and the Kurdish materials, because of course there are a lot of displaced people and refugees in Kurdistan, both from other parts of Iraq and also from Syria. So the materials in both those languages have been used in workshops, and the course the program that I've developed for Pakistan, it starts with working with a few universities, and they would then recruit community-based trainers, and the community-based trainers would come from, there are a lot of unemployed graduates in Pakistan, and so they would have the opportunity to spend a month going around the schools, doing one-day workshops, and in introducing the teachers to the idea of human rights, and also to the children's course, and then the children's course would be made available in hard copy, because there is often no Wi-Fi, no internet in the rural schools in Pakistan, and we'd have to have political backup for this, and so it could be possible to actually have the lessons on TV, because most people have TV, even if they don't have Wi-Fi. But that's the program. That's the answer to the question. Do I want to get this into schools? Yes, I do.
When you say you need the political or government backing, do you mean by the governments of those countries themselves?
Well, I mean, if it's going to go into Pakistan, it would need to be coordinated with the Ministry of General Education.
Because countries like Iran and Pakistan and those countries, they're sort of like dictatorships, and they don't want the people to be aware of their rights.
Well, it's funny, but you can always find good people. I'm not in Iraq, probably not in Iran, but I am hopeful that we could make a start in Pakistan, especially with the Prime Minister, and also there are good people within the military, and the military have a lot of power in Pakistan.
Okay, thank you so much.
That's okay, but I mean the program in Pakistan is also, it's like a template, because the same program basically could go into any country, and I'm in touch with people in Africa, and there are some countries that would welcome it. Countries which have come out of a long period of oppression or dictatorship. For example, like Ethiopia or there's another country, maybe it's Gambia, I'm not quite sure. Yes, so I'm a very opportunistic person, and I will talk to anyone who's prepared to talk to me. So as I said earlier, the first section, and in fact the fifth section of the preamble, I mean, that is all about human dignity. And just to get back to my, there we go. So what the preamble actually says, and this is a simplified version because the original language is 70 years old now, 70 something years old, and it's for people who are not native English speakers, it can be a bit difficult. So the simplified version of paragraphs 1 and 5 of the preamble goes. And it's basically what the preamble is doing is it's giving the reasons why. So each of them start with because ignoring the rights of human beings has caused acts of hatred that have shocked and saddened the people of the world. And we all want to live in a world where people can speak freely what they believe and where no one is poor or afraid. And the fifth paragraph says, because the peoples of the world have said in the Charter of the United Nations that they believe in human rights and in the value of each and every man, woman, and child, and they have decided to work for a better world, a better life, and more freedom for all people. So that's right, setting the tone for what we're talking about. And of course, when they say because ignoring the rights of human beings has caused acts of hatred that have shocked and saddened the people of the world, I mean, they are writing 3 years after the end of World War II. And of course, you know, we know what happened in World War II. So the second section of the preamble is because respect for the equal importance of every human being is the only way the world will have freedom, justice, and peace. And sections 3 and 4 are because it is important that the laws should protect all people, so no one is forced to rebel against cruelty. Because it is important that countries learn to get along with each other. So there's an important point here, because the way that people are treated within a country, it creates a pattern, so that if people are decently treated within their country, then that government is probably going to treat other countries in a reasonable way. But if you've got an oppressive government internally, then it's likely to be interested in, let's just say, dangerous foreign adventures, and leave it at that. So the preamble sections 6 and 7, they say, because all member countries of the United Nations have promised to work together to respect human rights and freedoms, and because all countries need to have the same understanding of what these human rights and freedoms are. So basically what they're saying is, it's the same as what I was saying about how it is if everybody within a society, or every individual in the world understands human rights. If all the countries have the same understanding of human rights, and then the countries are going to be able to get on with each other. I mean, one of the things that my grandfather had been doing in he was one of the leading figures in international public law in the first half of the 20th century. And one of his interests was the rights of countries as against other countries. And he understood that Iran had been trying to renegotiate some of its international treaties on the basis of greater equality. And when I was researching the material to give the talk in 2014, I had to learn a new word. And this was a capitulatory regime. And to capitulate means to give in or surrender. So, so a capitulatory regime is a regime that gives in to another regime, and he was very well aware of this, and it was this interest and attitude of his which was manifested when he took the stand that he did take. So the final part of the preamble is about education. And it says, this Universal Declaration of Human Rights is a rule to be followed and remembered always by the people and societies of this world, as they teach respect for these rights and freedoms, doing everything possible to be sure they are kept by all the countries of the United Nations and by all the people living in these countries. Now, obviously, what this means is it should be taught in all schools everywhere, and that was the intention in 1948. And if we had been doing that since 1948, I'm sure we'd be living in a very, very different world. So that's all I have for you this evening. We've got another 10 minutes to 7:30. So who has questions or comments or anything you'd like to say?
Hello. Hi. We are glad
Hi.
that you are here. I've been in your lessons about human rights maybe 4 or 5 years ago with Miss, you said, I forgot the name again.
Well, there was Mahmoud Haidari,
Yeah.
and then one of the people that gave a series of lectures was Armatius Shafi.
Yeah, that was very useful, but thank you. And that's prepare for us to understanding human right and definition of that. But the main point is our regime, the Islamic regime, the foundation of this regime is based on lies. You know, at the beginning, more than 40 years ago, the revolution based on their lies and violence and segregation, discrimination, everything. But it still continue until now. Even the regime signed the human rights agreement, but they didn't attention to that, and still do violence against the people. There is no rule for human rights at all. You know, the segregation, discrimination about the women. Even still, women doesn't have a right to be a judge or to be a prime minister or something like that.
Right.
You know? More people now, because of the social media, every people know aware of that, the human right, they become aware about everything. But the problem is still, because the brutal regime, the other countries that ally, that unite to these agreements, why they're not against this regime? Because they all signed this agreement. If the country doesn't pay attention to this agreement, the others should do something, you know. But still nothing happened. If after 40 years, more than 40 years, this regime is still doing his behavior, his brutal behavior, his manner, but nothing changed. Even people uprising many times, but they killed by the government, they arrested, they prison and everything. But it's still not about the human rights, about basic things. But other countries, they still have a trade with Iran, have a communication with Iran, but they don't talk about this problem. The main problem is that if the regime, it should be changed. There is no way. But when the human rights can be done just by the government should be enforced. This rule should be enforced by government. We know, we understand our right. As a woman, for example, I should go, for example, to have a study in another country. But if I don't marry, my father don't let me go out. These are simple things. These are very simple things. But as a human, I have a right to choose.
So can I just ask, you say if you're not married, your father won't let you out. So is your father, I mean, would a girl's father be supporting the regime? So is there agreement with some of the, for example, restrictions on women within the society and not just from the government?
The government need the letter from your father, from your husband. They need the letter from your husband, from your father.
So what I'm saying is that that there are violations of human rights within the family as well as from the government. Is that right?
Yeah, this is part of that. But sorry.
It's okay.
Go for that.
Oh, I just want to clear what you want to say to make it more clear to Lord McNair. Is that what Rehane tried to mention and clarify is that because of the law in country, Islamic or Sharia law, so the woman or any woman who is not married, she is not able to obtain the passport. So the guardians, whether is her father or her husband, they have to sign the sort of like the agreement that they are happy that his daughter or his wife get a passport. So in case if they don't give that permission, so she is not allowed to have a passport. So she cannot leave the country at all. So that's the one of the rights that Rehane was talking about.
So this the question that I have, or the point that I'm trying to highlight, is that you've got a brutal regime, but also the regime has cultural support within the society.
I think to answer that question is not that they have support for the regime, it's that the regime has kept the society in the 20th century, so the mindset of the people hasn't come into the 20th, well, not everyone, but still a lot of people are still thinking like it's the 20th century.
Right, I see. So so they're preventing cultural evolution.
Yes.
And may I add something else?
Sure.
Yes. Some people are misusing the power that regime gave them against their wife, children, and their family. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I mean, obviously, it's there's not an easy solution to the situation, but what I would say that is that if we can get human rights education established in the countries where it is possible, then there will be growing awareness in those cultures and more chance that they will put pressure on their governments to put pressure on governments like the Iranian government to move to respect human rights to some degree?
Well, sure. Let me come to that point. If I really like that question that you pointed at the beginning to ask the people themselves, is my human rights protected? Are there other human rights, people's human rights are protected? So that question, I think it brings us to that question that Rehane tried to ask you. So I guess if we know our rights can be protected for ourselves and for the others, so definitely the human rights in that society are protected. So the question is, when the all modern and civilized nations around the world, they believe in human rights and aware of, and they know that Iranian regimes brutally and will deny human rights. And well, obviously we can see a lot of criminal, not just that, is a lot of things going on, especially you can heard a lot of executions. The other governments and the nations are quiet and not standing shoulder by shoulder to the Iranian people. And the most important part, if we believe it, justice is one of the essential for everybody. Why the other nation or the government wouldn't wanted justice for Iranian people?
That's a very, very good point. And the problem that you get is that that there are conflicts of interest. Now, as I understand it, Iran is not exactly a developing country. It's got industrial production and so on. And so I don't know whether the decline of oil is going to adversely affect the power of Iran in the world. But there are certain regimes, if oil loses the importance that it has had up till now, then geopolitics is going to change. And the answer to the question about why the Western countries don't put pressure on Iran to respect human rights, I'm sad to say, is mainly to do with geopolitics and the perception of national interests and defense and that kind of thing. I'm not very well up on the details of international politics and so on, but I think the answer is there, and the only suggestion I can make is that if we can get human rights education into the being done in the countries where it's possible, then it will be easier to push politicians, to push governments, to push other governments to respect human rights. I mean, in the early years of the after the Islamic Revolution, my father was a member of the House of Lords, and he in the Lords and another an MP, both independently became horrified by the treatment of the Baha'i people, the members of the Baha'i faith in Iran, and spoke up for them and made a fuss and alerted their respective houses to what was going on and pushed the Foreign Office to make representations to the regime I'm not sure how much difference it made, but it certainly highlighted it on the international stage, and that's the kind of thing that you really want, isn't it?
Yes, that's correct. Yes, that's what we needed. And if you don't mind, and the other people, I would like to have the last question, and is how we can, and well, to help you to bring this sort of human rights education to the Iranian nations. So we would like to know how we can help you in that way and this direction.
Okay. Well, I mean, I have written an online course. It's quite a personal course because, as you will have gathered, my grandfather and my father both stood up for human rights in the issues that manifested while they were in a position to do something about it. I mean, my grandfather wasn't involved in the creation of the European Convention on Human Rights, but he once the convention, the European Convention on Human Rights had been written and agreed, he then campaigned for a court to uphold it. Now, there's no court that upholds the Universal Declaration, but there is the European Court of Human Rights, and that is nothing to do with the European Union. That is a sorry, I don't know why I didn't unshare. So there's absolutely no reason why we should worry about losing the Human Rights Act, for example, because it's a Council of Europe creation and not a European Union creation. The Council of Europe has 47 countries, and it was created after the war so that countries could talk to each other. It wasn't created as a common market or a political union or whatever. And so, but anyway, my grandfather was the first president in response to his campaign to have a court. They made him the founding president. So he was the founding president of the European Court of Human Rights, which started work in 1959. So it's quite a personal, orientation on the course. So, it's not an academic course, but I've tried to write it in a way that, anyone from, maybe 16 years on, or even maybe a bit younger, could understand it, and understand the importance of human rights and so on. I mean, I've created the course with a price tag of $30, because that way Peaceful Planet gets some income and can do more. Now, I mean, as we go through these workshops, I will be creating the PowerPoint presentation, and once I have the whole presentation right through to Article 30, what I would do is possibly using the video that you're making of this time, or possibly when I've been through it a few times and I've got a little bit more experience, we'll have a video presentation of it. And my idea is that people could use it with other people and encourage people to do the online course. And I've had the idea that the online course could have an affiliate system, so that when somebody's created the course, finished the course, completed the course, then they can share it with other people and make some affiliate commission. So my intention is that it would then it would motivate people to actually push it out into the society, whichever society, and in whichever language we have it in. So one of the things that I would like to do is I would like to have the course translated into Farsi. And then if the course is translated into Farsi, then people can, people in Iran can do it. Obviously, I guess they'd have to be careful about doing it, but that's the best answer that I can give you at the moment.
Thank you very much, Lord McNair. I'm very pleased to have you there, and I'm hoping that we will have you more and more again. And I don't know, is there anybody have any questions? So,
Thank you, just say thank you.
Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. I mean, this is the first I'm planning to have 7 sessions. So if you want to have the next session on the actually the last slide, which I didn't show you.
You can, if you wanted, I can bring it up so you can share it.
Yes. Okay. Well, I mean, it was just the schedule of the next meeting. So what's today? Today is the 8th, is it?
Yes.
Yeah, so the next meeting would be on the 15th. But I mean, it doesn't if you've got 22. Other. Sorry?
It's going to be 22nd.
Sorry, 22nd. Yes, because it's every fortnight. Sure. So I mean, if you would like me to work my way through the Universal Declaration, fortnight by fortnight, I'd be very happy to, or whatever you want.
Well, I will reschedule it and I will let you know. Sure.
Anyway, I mean, I forget whether the version that you have has the dates on it. I don't think it does actually, or it's got the wrong dates because we thought it was going to be last.
Well, I was waiting for you to play for people here. I keep it so.
Yeah. Anyway, so what I'll do is I'll send you newly the one that I've been using, and if you want the next one next fortnight, next meeting, I'd be delighted to do that.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. Good night, everybody.
Thank you very much.
Good night. Thank you so much.
Okay, bye bye.